Yeah, buddy. Proudly brought to you in low quality and low definition. This is Bad Guy Labs, where experiments and free thought are done. I'm Jason Emerson, here with my partner, Cole Koenig.
Hello.
We're here to accept the job of being the bad guys, and you two can join us as honorary bad guys. End of message. So we have
a sweet message.
Social media to cover. As always, you can email us at BadGuyLabsChannel@gmail.com. We're on Facebook under the name Bad Guy Labs. We're at Bad Guy Labs on Twitter. God, this is an excruciating list. And of course, our YouTube channel is BadGuyLabsChannel. Like us, subscribe to us, follow us, whatever else you can do to us. I don't know. And tell your friends. Very important. Tell your friends. Make comments. Send us emails.
Tell your enemies.
Accidentally tweet naked pictures of yourself.
Yes.
All that happy horse shit. I don't know. And if you think up some other new way of, doing stuff, like do that too. I don't even know. I don't know half the crap on social media that you can do still. So
we also accept baked goods.
Yeah, I'll probably like if I see something laying around, like I'll probably eat it.
That's an adequate description of a dog.
We don't have any other. We're still not doing anything with our blog yet. Someday, whatever. I fully think we both intend to.
Yeah.
Hit that probably more when the podcast starts and the YouTube channel isn't the main area of what we're doing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Once we're fully committed to doing the podcast, and mostly the podcast, and we'll use the blog a little bit more. Until then we'll just H&Q it if we need to.
Alrighty, well I guess that covers that. Jumping right in, we need to clarify and qualify a couple of things. I figured this would happen. And it probably did to more than the feedback we got. But I was worried about this, but I always say what I want to say, and I'm not going to ever. I don't want to say I'm not going to apologize for it, but I don't regret any of the things I've said so far. I'll put it that way. So. We've been making an effort to make Bad Guy Labs into some example of harmless, if controversial, free thought. The point of what we say is to celebrate the ability to engage in free thought and analysis and show that people who say offensive things can't be pigeonholed into an arbitrary category. Along with the rest of the people we hang out with and let onto the show, who I say are good people. I mean, this is the irony of the name Bad Guy Labs. I want us all to be examples of something great, and I want that to come through. Like, I want that overall point of the show to come through. So if you're going to... This is the reason why we focus on offensiveness. I don't actually want people to get offended when I say offensive things. That's the point. That's the point of the joke. That's the joke of the whole series. I don't know if I'm putting that across right.
We'll say what you're gonna say, and we'll go.
I want to show that good people do in fact speak with offensive language. But that at the end of the day, it doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to mean anything. And people keep putting meaning into it. And that's not what you're supposed to do. That's not the point of this.
Well, I sort of want people to understand right off the bat. And if it takes us saying it, then we'll say it and we'll move on. But there's a certain meaning with which you should interpret or accept what we say, and don't worry about us magically changing that someday.
Right. I want the message of the show to be one of freedom, fearlessness, loving happiness, and ironically through offensive and taboo speech. I don't want the show to actually be offensive. I want it to be the opposite of that, ironically. And I think that can be done. I think that's something that can be done. I'm going to try my hardest to do that. That's why we tell rape jokes. That's why we talk about racial slurs, whatever it may be. And I'll never get tired of pointing out all the people who laugh their ass off at Mexican jokes, but then get annoyed at like Jew jokes or black jokes or woman jokes or whatever.
Gay jokes. Yeah, like you could cover. There's like bases. The basic bases of these things. There's like a midget on one base and there's a woman on another base. And a black guy, the very rare black Jew, off in left field. To use baseball, I guess. But there is an overarching message in this show, and I want that to be very clear. That the label bad guy is ironic, and all the things we're doing are ironic, and the things that we do and say are a reaction to what's going on in our culture regarding political correctness. That's the point of the show. Yeah, like it's trying to attack. I see bad guy as the opposite of the nice guy, and nice not in the sense of like, being kind and generous or any of those things, but nice in terms of people that are upholding the status quo. They're towing the line. They're not asking questions. They're just rolling with horse shit. They're just accepting, oh, this is the way we're doing things now, or oh, this is the way you have to talk about things, or this is something people like, so you just have to sort of let them go. The opposite is the person who has a low threshold on their bullshit detector. Mm-hmm. And they're not trying to hurt anybody. They're just frustrated that they have to put up with so much bullshit.
Agreed completely. I think we're not breaking new ground here either. Perhaps we are, as like a lot of comedians are already doing this and have been for decades. Probably satirists, since satire has been around, have been doing this. The only difference between us and them is that we have a show where we're also interested in other things, like occasionally we're going to touch on like the con game, or what it means when somebody's being illogical. Like most comedians don't it's not in their area of expertise to the level I think it is with us.
Yeah.
I mean, most comedians don't have a lab, and like we're not like full-fledged like analytical scientist type. That's not our area. Like we're entertainers first, and we entertain by doing experiments. They're usually thought experiments, or as I call them, free thought experiments. Occasionally we do and will continue to do physical experiments, because we do have like the shit for that. So that's the difference between us and like a comedian, but we're not doing anything new. We're not breaking new ground by fighting political correctness and telling midget jokes.
Right. That's true.
I think perhaps we may have touched on something, and even this isn't new because comedians have been touching on this already. It's like the whole rape joke thing, and like it's almost like a taboo subject.
Which is part of the reason we wanted to bring it into the show in the first place, is because it is a taboo subject, and it's just more fun to push the envelope. It just is more fun. It's more fun to push the envelope, to use hyperbole, all of that shit.
Yeah, if it's taboo, like we're gonna go there.
Right.
That's another thing that like all of you need to know about this show is we're going to go to taboo places to find out why they're taboo, and we're going to see if the reason something is taboo holds up, and if it doesn't, like I'm sorry, like if you're offended or something by us just discussing this.
Yeah.
For example, there's a common statement going around the internet, and that statement is trigger warning. Like people put trigger warning before a news item or something that discusses some touchy area.
Yeah, I wasn't familiar about that till about last week.
Yeah, apparently, and it's almost to the point of a cliche now. Like, it's been used so much. It started out like trigger warning. We're going to discuss rape in this news item. You know, you see that a lot. So, you know, if you are sensitive about rape, like, you may want to prepare yourself or just not read it. But people have been putting trigger warning for other things to the point where it's almost pointless.
Yeah.
Trigger warning, and it's not about rape. It's a trigger warning about some other thing that you may be triggered by, and it's being burned up. It's being used up.
Well, it sounds like it's being diluted to the point where it has no efficacy.
Yeah, you know, like, everybody has a thing. Rape is one of the more worst things, but everybody has a thing, like,
that sets them off emotionally.
That triggers them. That triggers their emotions. Yeah, and I guess that's why people started doing it. But I mean, that's not how real life works. Like, real life has lots of shit going on in it, and there aren't always trigger warnings and, you know, analysis and free thought, and especially doing it ironically like we are, to make a point, to make a very specific point. Like, you can't always stop and do trigger warnings, and sometimes I think the trigger warnings are just plain inappropriate. You know, like, this is the question of, let's say somebody feels really bad about mentioning rape. Like, if you just say the word rape to this certain person, they feel terrible inside because it triggers something in them. But at what point do we accommodate, like, where do we start accommodating people and where do we stop? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anybody does.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a useful discussion necessarily to even have.
And different people will accommodate to different levels, and there will always be some group out there that thinks you're doing it wrong. Like, if I was to accommodate a lot, I would be inhibited, and I wouldn't be able to say the things I want to say, and I don't like that. On the other hand, I don't want people to feel bad because, as I said earlier, I want to spread happiness. Like, I don't want to spread misery in the world. I want happiness to happen. I've always been interested in philosophical happiness and love and all that stuff. Loving happiness, I think, was the word I said, the phrase I said. And I mean that. But to do that, sometimes you have to talk about taboo subjects, and sometimes you have to bring up things that will trigger some people to feel negatively. But the question is, why do you feel negatively about it? And how long are we supposed to accommodate you for it? And just because a word makes you feel bad, what does that mean? That we can't say it anymore, or that we have to say it in a certain way, or we can only talk about it in a certain tone? This is where the point comes in that A, you can turn your radio or computer off at any time, and B, this is something else that I believe in very strongly, is the idea of continually reconsidering your position. This isn't like being raped, but I fell off of a roof years ago, and it was absolutely terrifying, and I thought I was going to die. And it, like, heights bothered me for a long time. They bothered me anyway, but after that, I had a lot of nightmares, and I would wake up screaming sometimes, and but like, I ended up getting back on roofs. Like, I didn't forever demand trigger warnings when people were going to talk about falling from, like, a height and hurting yourself.
Right.
Like, I realized that the world sometimes involves things that I don't like, and I reevaluated how I felt about it. That's all. Now, if you were raped and you don't like thinking about rape, that's worse than falling off of a roof. So I feel for you, but I guess you may want to turn off your computer. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, that is sort of what that boils down to. Us ever bringing up rape or making a rape joke is not meant to hurt anyone that was raped. But if you can't handle that, that's all we can say is you don't want to listen to our show then.
And also, I better not catch you laughing at midgets, like, which I catch people all the time who hate rape jokes laughing their ass off at midgets. Mm-hmm. And, like, the midgets hate that. They don't even like being called midgets. I mean, what? That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I was gonna say whatever. Yeah, okay.
But you're missing the bigger picture if you don't like one type of joke, but then you laugh at all the other ones. I think that's inconsistent, and you may want to reevaluate your position there. Either you will really become very politically correct, or you'll realize that we all have reasons to laugh at ourselves, and in a friendly, loving, happiness kind of way, laugh at other people, and not because of their misery, but because laughing at life is one of the ways that we get through life in a pleasant way.
And I mean, I think one of the reasons we want to talk about this and even address it and sort of have this, for lack of a better word, it's going to be sort of a dry bit of a show that we're going to do, is because there is that concern that we have about being liked by the right people and being disliked by the right people too, in a certain sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That, how do I want to put it?
Well, while you're thinking about it, I want to just say quickly, based on what you just said, we're not always going to be silly here, so it's about 50-50, I would say. I think that's a good mix. It's partial silliness and partial seriousness.
Yeah, I agree.
Serious analysis and silly analysis.
Yeah, that's a good point. I agree. But yeah, it's about being offensive, but I think this is one of the risks that we took when we're talking about political correctness, because there's political correctness out there that is either unwarranted, silly, or whatever. You can make the argument that all political correctness is absurd and useless, but not all reactions against political correctness are equal.
Right.
And I think that's one of the things that we've tried to do so far. I don't know how well that's gotten across to everybody, so we're just sort of taking this opportunity to lay it out in very serious terms, I would say. So one of the risks that we take is that there's a lot of people that think that if we're making a rape joke or a joke about some minority group, whether it's racial or otherwise, that we mean it and we're just trying to be silly about it so we don't get our asses nailed to the wall with the PC patrol or whomever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're making it because, again, we've said this before, because we think racists and sexists and homophobes and whatever else are absurd fucking people.
Yeah.
That those people are not quite human the way the rest of us are. I'm going to go ahead and say that. They've got deficiencies, and fuck them. And that's not what we mean. We're not going to write the politically correct guide to evolution that says that evolution is horseshit and that what the Bible says is true. Because that's not what... It's not politically correct to say evolution is true. It's scientifically correct to say evolution is true.
Yeah.
So, but when you get out of the scientific realm and you get into the sort of social, cultural realm about language usage and words and different groups... things that are taboo, like rape or pedophilia or incest or anything like that, we don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. What we're trying to do is we're trying to use offensiveness to demonstrate to, again, the nice people that maybe the way that they're handling it, maybe the way that they approach it and that they talk about it is either just stupid and pointless, or that it's even detrimental to a healthy discourse about how these events or how these adverse events or how the way that different groups react or interact with each other in society, how they actually function, how we should actually look at it, or just the absurdities of our world. We're not endorsing any shittiness. We're trying to be funny, to blow off the cobwebs out of the brains of the nice people.
Yeah, exactly. This is the reason why I don't believe there should be taboo subjects. It just leads to a bad place. It's contrary to free thinking. And part of free thinking, I guess, maybe is a little bit of suffering. And maybe that's not a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It helps you grow sometimes, trial by fire, that kind of thing. I mean, you can't always be comfortable, like the way you feel about words. I don't know what to say. I've never really had anything really truly like bad happen to me. Like I've had a lot of times where I thought I was gonna die, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just really resilient. I mean, and I'm not gonna project that onto everybody else, but like falling off a roof and all the other times, I've been in a lot of like accidents and like times when I thought like I was going to die, and I don't know. Maybe other people are just more sensitive, and I'm not. I'm just not bothered by things to that extent.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's possible. And just again, for like, for the sake of full disclosure, I would say the same thing in my case. I mean, I've never really been, I don't even know if I've even had my life threatened. I've never, I haven't had my spouse or my child die. I haven't lost my property. I haven't had a lot of pain, physical or emotional, in my life. So maybe that does make it harder for me to relate to. But that's also why I actually do try to take care. You know what I mean? I do want to be offensive, but I want to offend people that have fucking stupid wired brains, not people that have genuine emotional and physical pain in their lives.
Yeah. It's sort of like what we said at one point, where when we make a rape joke and we laugh at rape jokes from other comedians, it means not that we like rape or that we think rape is funny, but the fact that we think rape jokes are funny, which is not the same thing as rape being funny, means that we extra super duper hate rape.
Right.
I've said that before. I'll say it now again. There's a message we're sending by laughing at rape jokes, and it's we think rapists are stupid, and we think people who think actual rape is funny are stupid. It's that ironic humor. It's that laughter that stems from some level of identification of something inappropriate.
Yeah.
I would definitely say rape's inappropriate.
Yeah, well, a sort of maybe a way to give a good example or to work with a cultural example is, did you ever watch any episodes, or are you familiar at all with Law and Order Special Victims Unit?
I've seen like 2 minutes of it in my whole life. I know what it is.
And like, I used to make jokes, or when I was more serious, give commentary, but make jokes about the show, because it's like for, there was a proliferation of shows for a while there that dealt with rape and pedophilia and sexual slavery and all the different things that come up on that show. And to me, it's worth making these jokes about, because I want people to think about, why is one of the highest rated, well-known shows on TV a detective show about where people are raped? There's a certain weird like sadism in that or something. I don't know what to call it, but to me it just strikes me as bizarre, and it's worth making jokes about to get people not to just go, because I don't know, it's just that's something that's rattled around in my head for a long time, and to me it's just a good example of this, and where people might shake their finger at me for making jokes about the content of Law and Order SVU. And I always go back to, I'm not producing a fucking show about rape cases. Like, that's not my job. I'm making fun about, why does everyone else want to watch it? I don't understand. So I want to talk about it and make fun of it, because I suspect that a lot of people watch it for mindless or idiotic reasons.
Well, I mean, it's sort of like what I said about people that have rape fantasies at one point.
Yeah,
I remember.
Yeah.
It's the difference between thoughts, which you're free to engage in as a free thinker, and actions. I think people confuse thoughts and ideas with actions, and they think they're equally inappropriate.
Yeah. And
based on the different books I've read about rape fantasies that people have, and I'll clarify it again. It's a fact that a large percentage of the population has fantasies about getting raped. It's a sexual fantasy they have. And there's also a large percentage of the population that has sexual fantasies about engaging in like being a rapist. But they don't actually believe in real rape in real life. It's just one of those weirdnesses in the wiring of our brains. And watching a show about rape it doesn't mean anything. That's the thing. People are seeing meaning in places where they should not be seeing meaning. They're drawing a conclusion that's not based on the evidence and logical reasoning. You can't conclude that just because a woman fantasizes about being raped, it really turns her on. It does not mean that she really supports real rape. And I think that's the conclusion some people would draw. Or watching the, what is it, SVU? What
yeah, SVU.
Watching SVU means that you are pro-rape in some way. It just doesn't mean that. Even watching Rape Man, that cartoon we've talked about, you can make a distinction between people who watch that and actual rapists and people that are pro-rape. And people are drawing the conclusion, PC fucks are drawing the conclusion that somebody that has never raped anybody but engages in this sort of thinking or viewing or fantasizing is a bad guy, and they're not. They're just human beings, and they have weird brains that are wired funny, and that's why you have to concentrate on people's actual actions and not their things they think, their drives, even words they say, but it doesn't mean that they go to it, they take action. This is why I'm so into being a free thinker. You could really fuck somebody over if you implied, not that I'm afraid of that, but I'm not afraid of much. And again, I don't want to project that on other people. But you could really fuck somebody's life up if you got everybody to think they liked rape and rapists.
Yeah.
When they don't. Just because you saw them watching SVU or Rape Man, or you found out they confided in you that they have rape fantasies in the bedroom. You could really fuck somebody's life up that way. And that's why it's all about actions and not about ideas. We can have any ideas we want, and I don't think that's a problem. So that's why we say all the offensive things we say, and that's why I said there's a point to doing that. It's not just because we just randomly sit around thinking up horrid things.
Right. Well, and I mean, what you said reminded me of, that's why we're even talking about this right now, is because there's the people that are going to be obviously offended because they just don't get it and they're not going to get it. And then there's the people that are entertained and laugh with us. But there's probably some people out there that they hear it and they kind of think it's funny, but it kind of makes them uncomfortable. And that's sort of why we're talking about it, is if you're uncomfortable to the point where maybe you don't, you're starting to worry about us or something, what we're trying to do here is say, don't worry about it. We aren't actually endorsing something terrible. And if you're listening to us and laughing with us, you're not either. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. A little note I jotted to myself here that I think is relevant. At its roots, Bad Guy Labs is in favor of being free to express yourself because Bad Guy Labs is in opposition to making assumptions about language or the tendency for people to discard the principle of generosity. Principle of generosity is when somebody makes a statement. You could interpret it in the worst possible way, or you could be generous and try to interpret somebody's message in the most generous, positive light you could. What do you want to assume about the person? I think the default should be the principle of generosity. Maybe not. I bring up Nazis a lot on this show for some reason. Maybe not with Nazis. But
Nazis are pretty well indicted for the things that we suspect them of having done.
There's prior plausibility with Nazis.
Right.
We already know some things about Nazis. But with us, if you're listening to us and our show's relatively young and you don't know that much about us, all you have is our word that we're actually good, decent people.
That's true.
You can believe that or not, but what are you going to do when you hear our shows? Are you going to assume the worst, or are you going to be generous and assume something else? At least neutrality, if not a good position.
Yeah, I mean, another way to think about this, and I hope I'm not just repeating you, but is to rather fail to assume malicious intent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the way I learned the same principles, we just called it the principle of charity in argument. It's that same idea, is that to not assume malicious intent, to assume ignorance or misstatement or something else before you assume malicious intent.
Yeah, principle of charity is interchangeable. Same,
Yeah.
I've seen that around a ton too, and it's exactly what I'm talking about. And you just described Hanlon's razor. I don't remember if we mentioned this, but a lot of these things bear repeating because I notice a trend of people only hearing some of what we say.
Okay.
They'll hear the whole show, but they'll only hear some of our ideas, and then for whatever reason, our other ideas that are very important and hinge on each other get missed.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna end up, and that, a lot of shows do that. If not every show I've ever listened to repeats their ideas on occasion. So, Hanlon's razor is the rule. A heuristic that says that you should always assume the literal rule is you should always assume incompetence before malice. Mm-hmm. Now, incompetence doesn't mean like being retarded or something.
Right.
It just means you
made a mistake
or ignorant or something like that.
You just didn't know.
So, a variation of Hanlon's razor that I sometimes say to people when I don't want to give a long explanation about what incompetence does and does not mean is, at the very least, don't assume malice first.
Right.
That's if you do that, if you go around assuming people are malicious until they prove otherwise, you're gonna probably have a miserable life, and you could very well likely fuck over other people and fuck their life up. I think that this is the question of reputation. I'm not super concerned about things like that. I'm just going to be myself and be genuine and hope that my desire to spread loving happiness comes through, that message comes through. But I understand that some people care about their reputations, and I'm sensitive to that. And on some level, I guess we all are, but maybe just me to a lesser extent. I'm against people running smear campaigns and going around making assumptions about other people, good people, and then ruining their reputation.
Right.
I'll defend them. I'm a guy who doesn't give a shit, but who will defend other people. So that's one of the reasons why I do the show. I'm into free thought. I'm into actually the promotion and buildup of the good people out there, the good guys who are labeled the bad guys. That's the point.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in favor of being free to express yourself because Bad Guy Labs is in opposition to making assumptions about language or the tendency for people to discard the principle of generosity / charity in favor of presuming to know what a person means or thinks better than that person does. Who knows what I mean better than I do?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody, in my opinion. This is why you need to be generous and charitable in your assumptions. If I am indeed a good person, and all you have is my word to go on that, and hopefully over time my actions and the outcomes of those actions, nobody knows what I mean better than I do. If you take everything the wrong way, you're going to see us wrong, and you're going to believe things that aren't true. I'm very against that. We both are.
Yeah.
Frankly, on some level, I'm annoyed when people, I don't know why they would think they know what I mean better than I do. It happens sometimes. They tell me what I meant. I've experienced this a lot of times. I don't know if you have, but how could
maybe.
they? Like what are they thinking there? That it's sort of where the straw man comes in. It's one of the tactics. It's one of the things in the bag of dirty tricks. If you hear something and you're triggered by it emotionally, or you have a preconceived notion about something, and you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to listen. Sometimes you just your emotions get the better of you, and you just become reactionary because of some. With some people, it's defense of women, and I think women are great and they should be defended, but not to the extent that you argue against a straw man, a version of me that's not what I said and not what I meant.
Right.
In order to, I guess, win. I don't know.
Well, like in one of the tactics I've seen that sort of relates to what you're talking about. I don't know if this is one of the things you're thinking of, but it's just the habit I've noticed of some people of when they want to argue with you, that is, the way you use language is rigid, and there's a one-to-one correspondence between a word and its meaning. There's no metaphor in language. But when they're talking, there is metaphor. There is ambiguity. Yeah. There is wiggle room. So in that way, when you argue with them, they don't have to be nailed down by anything they say. But when they argue with you, you're just an asshole because what you say can only mean one thing.
Right.
And that one thing is determined by, I don't know, them, a committee. Like, I'm not sure, but
this leads to another point that I'm sort of. I've spent a lot of time learning about how argumentation works and how logical reasoning works, and one of the points that comes up repeatedly is the pedant or pedantry.
Yeah.
This is what a pedant would do. It's sort of the same thing as the literal douche, only an extension of the literal douche. A pedant,
or perhaps a subspecies of the literal douche.
Yeah.
Either way,
a pedant takes your words and it acts like a literal douche about them, and also is the type of person that likes to expound upon something for their own aggrandizement. In my experience, let me look up the exact definition of pedant. It's been a while.
They quabble over minor points.
Yes.
Like, here's what I'm thinking of with a pedant. It's also a literal douche in the same way that you just said it. Like, if I was making fun of like gay stereotypes and I said, "Oh, everybody knows gay dudes love strawberries." I mean, that's just like, you see a gay friend of yours eating strawberries and they're like, "Oh, I didn't know he liked those." And you're like, "Well, gay dudes love strawberries. What are you talking about?" Like, that's fucking stupid and absurd. But then the pedant next to you would go, "Well, I know, my friend Dave's gay and he doesn't like strawberries." Mm. And it's like, right? So why don't you flick on your humor switch and shut the fuck up? Like,
it's sort of a combination of a literal douche and a self-aggrandizer. The top definition I'm getting here is a person who is excessively concerned with minor details and rules, or with displaying academic learning, and there's a value in pedantry, but when you use it in the wrong places, you're just a big douche.
Yeah.
So don't be a pedant, and I'm here to tell you that we are not pedants. I say this a lot when I meet people. I go to various conferences and meetings and this and that. I engage with a lot of people, and sometimes I have to say to them, like, they speak very carefully because they aren't familiar with whatever group they're in yet, and I say right to them, I'm not a pedant, you don't have to worry about it so much. And sadly, in these places that I hang out, and these conferences I go to, etc., there are a lot of pedants, and they are kind of douchey, and I see why these people are kind of walking on eggshells, but I always try to make people feel very comfortable and say, I'm not a pedant. I get your meaning. It's because I'm being generous. It's because I'm being charitable with the conversation. And I think a lot of the problems in political correctness all revolve around these types of things.
Okay.
The literal douchiness, the pedant, the self-aggrandizer, whatever, however you want to label that. The people that aren't charitable and generous in conversation. People who don't know how to use logical reasoning properly. People who jump to conclusions because they don't know how to use logical reasoning properly. People who start out with a conclusion ahead of time and then use incorrect backwards thinking to try to piece the evidence in to support the preconceived belief they formed.
Yeah. Rather
than starting blank and seeing where the evidence leads. And this is how you reach the conclusion that Cole and I are bad guys, and if we gave a shit about things like reputation, you could fuck our lives up. I don't, and as I said, but I care about other people who care about their reputations, and I'll try to defend them. So